The November rain hammered against the cracked window of the Laurelwood Center shelter on Southeast Foster Road, each drop a reminder of how far Dorothy Harrison had fallen. At 68 years old, she sat on the edge of a thin mattress in the women's dormitory, her arthritic fingers clutching a faded photograph of her late husband, Kenneth. The shelter smelled of industrial cleaner and dampness, a scent that had become as familiar to her as the lavender perfume she once wore. Dorothy's reflection in the small mirror above the communal sink barely resembled the woman she used to be. Her silver hair, once styled weekly at Rosemary's Salon on Northwest 23rd Avenue, now hung in limp strands around her weathered face. The fine lines around her eyes had deepened into crevices etched by grief, exhaustion, and the relentless anxiety of survival. Her clothes, donated items from the Transition Project's day center, hung loosely on her shrinking frame. "Dot, you coming to breakfast?" called Angela Zimmerman, a younger woman in her 40s who occupied the bunk below. Angela had been on the streets for 3 years after a messy divorce left her penniless. Despite her own struggles, she'd taken Dorothy under her wing when the older woman first arrived 6 months ago. "In a minute," Dorothy replied, her voice hoarse from the cold she couldn't shake. The shelter's heating system struggled against Portland's autumn chill, and the temperature inside barely reached 60 degrees. Dorothy's journey to homelessness had been swift and merciless. 2 years ago, she and Kenneth had owned a modest bungalow in the Montevilla neighborhood where they'd raised their son, Jacob. Kenneth worked for 30 years as a machinist at Precision Cast Parts before retiring. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable, secure, happy. Then Kenneth was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The illness consumed him in 18 months, but not before consuming their savings, their retirement accounts, and eventually their home. Medicare covered some treatments, but the experimental therapies Kenneth's oncologist recommended, the ones that promised hope, weren't covered. Dorothy mortgaged the house, then took out loans, then maxed out credit cards. She would have sold her soul if it meant one more day with her husband. Kenneth died on a Tuesday morning in March, leaving Dorothy with $340,000 in medical debt and a foreclosure notice taped to their front door. Their son, Jacob Harrison, lived in Boston with his wife and 2 children. He'd offered to help, but his own financial situation was precarious. Dorothy refused his money, unwilling to burden him with her catastrophe. She told him she'd be fine, that she had friends, that the social services would help. It was a lie built on pride and maternal instinct. After the foreclosure, Dorothy moved into a cheap studio apartment in Lentz, paying month to month. She took a job at a grocery store, bagging items for minimum wage, despite her aching joints and failing eyesight. But the debt collectors were relentless, garnishing her wages until her paychecks barely covered groceries, let alone rent. When her landlord raised the rent by $200, she couldn't make it work anymore. She'd been living in her 1998 Honda Civic for 2 weeks when it was towed for unpaid parking tickets. That's when Angela found her crying on a bench near Laurelhurst Park and brought her to the shelter. Now, 6 months later, Dorothy existed in a fog of shame and disbelief. How had this happened? She'd worked her entire life, paid her taxes, been a good citizen. Yet here she was, standing in line for donated breakfast at a homeless shelter, invisible to the world that once knew her. The breakfast room buzzed with quiet conversations and the clatter of plastic trays. Dorothy accepted her portion, oatmeal, a bruised apple and weak coffee, and sat beside Angela at one of the long tables. Across from them sat Vernon Maxwell, a 65-year-old veteran who'd served 2 tours in Vietnam. His weathered face bore the distant expression of someone who'd seen too much. "Cold one today," Vernon remarked, stirring his oatmeal without enthusiasm. "Gonna be worse tonight. They're saying it might drop to 38. I heard some folks talking about sleeping under the Burnside Bridge," Angela said. "Says it's drier there than here." Dorothy ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her mind drifted to the previous afternoon when she'd fallen asleep on a bench at Chapman Square, exhausted after walking for hours to stay warm. She'd woken to a Portland police officer shaking her shoulder, telling her she was violating City Ordinance 14A. 50. 30. Unlawful camping in public spaces. The officer, a young man who couldn't have been older than 30, had been apologetic but firm. "Ma'am, I have to write you a citation. You'll need to appear at the Multnomah County Courthouse on December 3rd. Dorothy had nodded, accepting the slip of paper with trembling hands. Another problem, another humiliation. The citation carried a potential fine of $100 or up to 30 days in jail. She had neither money nor the capacity to endure incarceration. "You okay, Dot?" Angela's voice pulled her back to the present. "You've been staring at that oatmeal for 5 minutes." "I'm fine," Dorothy lied. "Just tired." After breakfast, Dorothy bundled herself in the donated winter coat Angela had found for her, navy blue with a broken zipper, and stepped out into the drizzle. The shelter required everyone to leave by 8 in the morning and didn't reopen until 6 in the evening. 12 hours to fill, 12 hours to survive. She walked toward the Transition Projects Day Center on Northwest Irving Street, where she could sit in the warmth and use the restroom without judgment. The 3-mile walk took her past the neighborhoods where she used to shop, past the coffee shops where she and Kenneth would share cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings, past lives that no longer belonged to her. Downtown Portland bustled with morning commuters, everyone rushing with purpose and destination. Dorothy moved among them like a ghost, unseen and unacknowledged. A businessman in an expensive overcoat nearly knocked her over in his haste, not bothering to apologize. A group of college students laughed as they passed, their joy a foreign language. At the day center, Dorothy found a chair near the window and sat, watching the rain streak the glass. She thought about the court date, about facing a judge, about the crushing weight of her existence. What would happen if she just didn't show up? Would they come looking for her? Did it even matter anymore? Her thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. "Vovo Dot. There you are." Dorothy turned to see Travis McAllister striding toward her, his leather vest adorned with patches from the Steel Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. At 52, Travis was built like a granite monument, broad shoulders, muscular arms covered in tattoos, and a full beard streaked with gray. But his eyes, warm and brown, held nothing but kindness. "Travis," Dorothy said, managing a smile. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," he said, pulling up a chair. His presence commanded attention. Several people in the center glanced their way. "Angela told me you got hit with a citation. Why didn't you call me?" Dorothy's eyes welled with tears. She'd met Travis 12 years ago when she volunteered at the Veterans Resource Center on Southeast Division Street, serving meals every Thursday evening. Travis had just returned from his 3rd deployment in Iraq, struggling with PTSD and readjustment. Dorothy had taken one look at the haunted young man and adopted him as her honorary grandson. Over the years, their bond deepened. When Travis founded the Steel Brotherhood MC, a club exclusively for veterans who rode motorcycles, Dorothy became their unofficial grandmother, attending their fundraisers, cooking for their charity events, and offering a listening ear to men who'd seen the horrors of war. "I didn't want to bother you," Dorothy whispered. "You've got your own life, Travis. I can't keep leaning on you." "Bullshit," Travis said firmly. "You were there when I had nothing, when I couldn't sleep, when I thought about eating my gun. You don't get to push me away now." Dorothy wiped her eyes with a threadbare tissue. "The court date is December 3rd. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't pay the fine, and I can't go to jail, Travis. I just can't." Travis's jaw tightened. "You're not going to jail, and you're not paying anything. I'm coming with you to that courthouse. We'll figure this out. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to," Travis interrupted. "I want to. Your family, Dot. The whole club considers you family. We take care of our own." For the first time in months, Dorothy felt a flicker of something she'd forgotten. Hope. Not much, just a spark, but enough to warm the cold hollow in her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Travis squeezed her hand. "Don't thank me yet. Just promise you'll show up on the 3rd, and I'll be right there with you." Dorothy nodded. "I promise." As Travis left, Dorothy sat back in her chair, watching the rain continue its assault on the city. December 3rd felt both impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. She had no idea that the day would change everything, for better and for worse, in ways she couldn't imagine. December 3rd arrived with the harsh clarity of a winter morning. Portland's sky hung low and grey, threatening rain, but withholding it, as if the city itself held its breath. Dorothy Harrison woke at 5:30 in the shelter's dormitory, her body aching from the thin mattress and the cold that seeped through the building's walls. She'd barely slept, anxiety gnawing at her stomach like a persistent rat. Angela helped her get ready, lending her a cleanish blouse and a pair of slacks that almost fit. "You look presentable," Angela said, though her eyes betrayed her worry. "Remember, just be respectful and honest. Judges are human too." Dorothy wasn't convinced of that last part, but she nodded anyway. Travis arrived at the shelter at 7:30, riding his Harley-Davidson despite the cold. He'd dressed in his club vest over a leather jacket, the Steel Brotherhood patch prominent on his back, a steel eagle clutching an American flag. Behind him rode 5 other members: Calvin Hammer Rodriguez, a 48-year-old former Marine with a prosthetic leg; James Diesel Patterson, a massive African-American man who'd served in the Navy; Gregory Wrench Foster, a quiet mechanic who'd done 2 tours in Afghanistan; Nathan Ghost Sullivan, a wiry man with silver hair and haunted eyes; and Michael Stone Bennett, the club's sergeant-at-arms and a former Army Ranger. The sound of their motorcycles rumbling outside the shelter drew attention from everyone on the block. Neighbors peeked from windows. Other shelter residents gathered outside to watch. Dorothy emerged, overwhelmed by the show of support. "You didn't have to bring everyone," she said to Travis, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, we did," Travis replied. "You stood by us. Now we stand by you." They escorted Dorothy to the Multnomah County Courthouse at 1200 Southwest 1st Avenue, their motorcycles forming a protective convoy through downtown Portland's morning traffic. People on the sidewalk stopped and stared at the procession, 6 leather-clad bikers surrounding an elderly woman walking with slow, careful steps. The courthouse was an imposing 17-story building completed in 2020, all glass and steel and institutional authority. Security at the entrance required everyone to pass through metal detectors. The bikers removed their wallets, keys, and belt buckles, submitting to the process with military discipline. Inside, the building hummed with bureaucratic efficiency. Lawyers in expensive suits hurried past with briefcases. Court staff moved with practiced indifference. Defendants and their families clustered in nervous groups, whispering anxiously. Dorothy's case was assigned to Courtroom 4C on the 7th floor, presided over by Judge Richard Blackwell. Travis and the Brotherhood accompanied her up the elevator, their presence drawing suspicious glances from security personnel and curious looks from other courthouse visitors. The courtroom itself was modern and cold, with blonde wood paneling and fluorescent lighting that seemed designed to leach all warmth from human interaction. Rows of bench seating faced the judge's elevated platform. An American flag and Oregon state flag flanked the bench. Everything smelled of furniture polish and old coffee. Judge Richard Blackwell's reputation preceded him. At 56, he'd been on the bench for 12 years, appointed during a Republican governor's term. He was known for his harsh sentencing, his impatience with defendants, and his barely concealed contempt for anyone he deemed unworthy of his courtroom. Local public defenders privately called him Blackheart for his lack of mercy. Dorothy and Travis sat in the gallery, waiting as the judge processed other cases. Dorothy watched, growing increasingly nervous as she observed Blackwell's demeanor. He was a tall man with graying temples, sharp features, and wire-rimmed glasses that he peered over with perpetual disdain. He interrupted defendants mid-sentence, dismissed explanations with curt hand gestures, and levied fines with casual cruelty. A young Hispanic woman, there for a traffic violation, tried to explain that she'd been driving her sick child to the emergency room when she ran a red light. Blackwell cut her off. "I don't care about your excuses. Violation stands. $250 fine. Next case." The woman left in tears. When Dorothy's name was called, case number 47B 2025, City of Portland versus Dorothy Ann Harrison, her legs almost gave out. Travis steadied her, whispering, "You've got this." Dorothy approached the defendant's podium, her hands gripping the edge for support. The court clerk, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Chen, read the charge in a monotone voice. "Ms. Harrison is cited for violation of Portland City Code 14A 50-030, unlawful camping on public property. How does the defendant plead?" "Your Honor," Dorothy began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I plead guilty, but I'd like to explain." "Speak up," Judge Blackwell snapped, not looking up from his paperwork. "The court can't hear you?" Dorothy cleared her throat, trying again. "I plead guilty, Your Honor. I fell asleep on a bench at Chapman Square. I didn't mean to break any laws. I was just so tired." Blackwell finally looked at her, his expression registering something between annoyance and disgust. "Ms. Harrison, it says here you're 68 years old. Don't you have a home?" "No, Your Honor. I'm currently staying at a shelter." "A shelter?" Blackwell repeated, his tone dripping with disdain. "And why, pray tell, are you homeless, too lazy to work, spent all your money on drugs?" The courtroom fell silent. Several people in the gallery shifted uncomfortably, Travis's hands clenched into fists. "No, Your Honor," Dorothy said, her voice shaking. "My husband died of cancer 2 years ago. The medical bills—" "Oh, here we go," Blackwell interrupted, leaning back in his chair. "The sob story. Everyone who comes through here has a sob story, Ms. Harrison. Do you know how many times I've heard, 'My husband died,' or 'I lost my job,' or 'Life is so hard'?" Dorothy felt her face flush with humiliation. "Your Honor, I'm just trying to explain. You're trying to manipulate this court into feeling sorry for you," Blackwell continued, warming to his topic. "You're standing there in your donated clothes, looking pathetic, hoping I'll just wave my hand and make your problems go away. Well, it doesn't work like that. I wasn't asking for—" "You broke the law, Ms. Harrison. You can't just sleep wherever you want because you made poor life choices. This city has rules. We can't have people like you camping all over downtown, making the place look like a third-world country. Tourists come here, businesses operate here. Your presence is a blight." The words hit Dorothy like physical blows. Tears streamed down her face, but she forced herself to remain standing. Blackwell continued his tirade, oblivious or indifferent to her distress. "Look at you. What happened to dignity? What happened to self-respect? When I was young, people took pride in themselves. They didn't sit around waiting for handouts. They worked, they saved, they planned for the future. But your generation—" "My generation?" Dorothy found her voice, anger cutting through the humiliation. "Your Honor, I worked for 43 years. I raised a son. I paid my taxes. I did everything right. And then life happened. My husband got sick. We spent everything trying to save him. I don't regret that. But I didn't choose this." Blackwell's face reddened. "Don't interrupt me. You don't get to lecture me about your choices. The fact is, you're standing in my courtroom because you broke the law. And frankly, looking at you, I wonder if you're even mentally competent. Are you on drugs, Ms. Harrison? Be honest." "No." Dorothy's voice cracked. "I've never touched drugs in my life." "Are you sure?" Because you certainly look like you might be. That vacant stare, the trembling hands, classic signs of substance abuse. She's not on drugs. Travis stood up from the gallery, his voice booming through the courtroom. She's scared because you're treating her like garbage. Judge Blackwell's head snapped toward Travis. Excuse me? Who are you? Travis McAllister, Your Honor. I'm here to support Ms. Harrison. Well, Mr. McAllister, unless you're an attorney, sit down and be quiet, or I'll hold you in contempt. With all due respect, Your Honor, you're out of line, Travis said, not sitting. This woman deserves basic human decency, not a public humiliation. The other members of Steel Brotherhood rose to their feet, standing silently behind Travis in a show of solidarity. The sight of 6 large, leather-clad bikers standing in unison sent a ripple of unease through the courtroom. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening this court? No, sir, Travis said evenly. We're standing with our friend, that's all. Bailiff, if any of these gentlemen make another outburst, remove them immediately, Blackwell ordered. The bailiff, a nervous-looking young man named Christopher Kim, nodded but looked distinctly uncomfortable with the prospect of physically removing 6 military veterans. Blackwell turned his attention back to Dorothy, his expression now curdled with vindictive satisfaction. Ms. Harrison, I find you guilty of violating City Code 14A, 50030. You are fined $500 to be paid within 30 days. Failure to pay will result in a warrant for your arrest and potential jail time of up to 30 days. Additionally, I'm ordering you to stay away from all public parks within Portland city limits for the next 6 months. If you're caught sleeping on any public property, you'll be arrested immediately. Do you understand? Dorothy could barely process his words. $500? She didn't have $5. And banning her from parks meant she had nowhere to go during the day when the shelter closed. Your Honor, I can't pay that, she whispered. I have no money. And if I can't go to parks, where am I supposed to? Not my problem, Blackwell said with finality. Maybe this will motivate you to get your life together. Court is adjourned. Next case. He banged his gavel, the sound like a gunshot in the silent courtroom. Dorothy stood frozen, unable to move. Travis rushed forward, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Come on, Dot, let's get you out of here. As they walked toward the exit, Blackwell made one final comment, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. At least try to bathe before you come back to my courthouse. The smell is quite offensive. Laughter erupted from a few people in the gallery, lawyers who curried favor with the judge, court staff who'd adopted his callousness. The sound was cruel and cold. Dorothy's legs gave out. Travis caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her gently. The other bikers surrounded them, forming a protective barrier as they carried her from the courtroom. Outside in the hallway, Dorothy sobbed in Travis's arms, her body shaking with the force of her breakdown. I can't do this anymore, she cried. I just can't. I wish I'd died with Kenneth. At least then I'd have my dignity. Don't say that, Travis said fiercely, his own eyes wet. Don't you ever say that. He had no right to treat you that way. No right. Calvin Hammer Rodriguez, his jaw tight with anger, pulled out his phone. I'm calling the club. Everyone needs to know what just happened. Gregory Wrench Foster, usually the quiet one, spoke up, his voice shaking with rage. That wasn't justice. That was a public execution. We need to do something, James Diesel Patterson added. We can't let this stand. Travis looked at his brothers, then at Dorothy's broken form and made a decision. We will do something. But first, we take care of Dot. Come on, let's get her somewhere safe. As they escorted Dorothy out of the courthouse, none of them noticed the young court reporter Jessica Winters, who'd witnessed the entire proceeding from her station. She'd been covering the Multnomah County courts for 3 years and had seen Blackwell's cruelty before, but never anything quite this vicious. Jessica pulled out her phone and began typing notes. This story needed to be told. The Riverside Diner on Southeast Morrison Street had been a Steel Brotherhood hangout for years. The owner, Frank Delgado, was himself a Vietnam veteran who gave club members a discount and never complained when their bikes took up half his parking lot. That evening, every member of the Steel Brotherhood MC converged on the diner, 43 men and 3 women, all veterans, all united by their service and their code. Dorothy sat in a corner booth, wrapped in Calvin's leather jacket, a cup of tea cooling in her trembling hands. She'd cried herself into exhaustion and now existed in a numb fog. Angela had left the shelter to join her, sitting beside her and holding her hand. Travis stood at the head of the largest table, addressing the assembled club. The diner had been closed to the public for this emergency meeting. Frank understood the gravity of the situation. "Most of you know Vovo Dot," Travis began, his voice carrying the weight of controlled fury. "She's fed us, listened to us, helped us when we were at our lowest. She's family." Today, a judge in the Multnomah County Courthouse treated her like she was less than human. He mocked her, accused her of being a drug addict, fined her $500 she doesn't have, and banned her from every public park in Portland. And when we stood up for her, he threatened to have us removed. Murmurs of anger rippled through the group. Helen Hawk Morrison, one of the 3 women in the club and a former Army helicopter pilot, spoke up. "Who's the judge?" "Richard Blackwell," Travis answered. Several members groaned in recognition. Nathan Ghost Sullivan shook his head. "I've heard about him. He's notorious for harsh sentences, especially against veterans with PTSD. My buddy Frank Chen went before him for a minor assault charge, bar fight, and Blackwell gave him 6 months, max sentence." "So what do we do?" asked Marcus Tank Williams, a former Army tanker who stood 6'5" and weighed 280. "We can't just let this slide." "We're not going to," Travis said, "but we do this smart. We're not thugs, and we're not vigilantes. We're veterans who understand chain of command, rules of engagement, and strategic planning. Here's what I'm proposing." He laid out his plan. First, they would document everything, get copies of the court transcript, gather witness statements, and create a detailed timeline. Second, they would reach out to media outlets and advocacy groups, making Blackwell's behavior public. Third, they would organize a peaceful demonstration outside the courthouse, drawing attention to how the homeless and vulnerable were being treated in Portland's judicial system. Finally, they would file formal complaints with the Oregon State Bar Association and the Commission on Judicial Fitness and Disability. "This isn't just about Dot," Travis continued. "It's about every person who's been degraded in that courtroom. Blackwell has been getting away with this for years because his victims are powerless, homeless, poor, addicted, mentally ill. People nobody listens to. But we have voices, resources, and connections. We're going to use them." The club voted unanimously to proceed. Within hours, the operation was in motion. Calvin Hammer Rodriguez, who worked as a paralegal at a legal aid nonprofit, requested the court transcript through official channels. What they received 2 days later was damning. Every cruel word, every mocking comment, every dismissive gesture captured in black and white. Helen Hawk Morrison, who had a journalism degree from Portland State University, began drafting a press release. She reached out to her former classmate Jessica Winters, the court reporter who'd witnessed the hearing. Jessica confirmed she'd already written an article about Blackwell's conduct and was shopping it to local news outlets. "This has been going on for years," Jessica told Helen over coffee at the Courier coffee shop on Southwest Washington Street. "Blackwell targets people he thinks can't fight back, the homeless, addicts, mentally ill defendants. I've documented at least 15 cases in the past 2 years where his conduct was clearly over the line, but nobody cares because the victims aren't sympathetic. They're those people." "Until now," Helen said grimly. "We're going to make people care." Meanwhile, Gregory Wrench Foster used his tech skills to create a social media campaign. He set up a Facebook page called Justice for Dorothy and a hashtag. Blackwell must go. He posted the transcript excerpts, Dorothy's story, and information about Judge Blackwell's history of harsh sentencing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the page had 3,000 followers. Dorothy's story was shared hundreds of times. Comments flooded in, some from other people who'd appeared before Blackwell and experienced similar treatment, others from Portland residents outraged by the judge's cruelty. Michael Stone Bennett, the club's sergeant-at-arms, coordinated with other veteran organizations across Oregon. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Vietnam Veterans of America, and Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America all pledged support. They issued joint statements condemning Blackwell's treatment of Dorothy and calling for his removal from the bench. Even the local chapter of AARP got involved after Travis reached out to them. They issued a statement expressing concern about the dignified treatment of elderly citizens in the judicial system and requested a meeting with Multnomah County's presiding judge. The media attention snowballed. Jessica Winter's article was picked up by the Oregonian, Portland's largest newspaper. The headline read, "Multnomah County Judge Publicly Humiliates Homeless Grandmother in Courtroom." The article included portions of the transcript, Dorothy's background, and statements from legal ethics experts questioning Blackwell's conduct. Local television stations picked up the story. KOIN 6 News sent a reporter to interview Dorothy and Travis at the diner. Sitting before the camera, Dorothy was nervous but resolute. "I just want people to understand that being homeless doesn't make you less human," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I worked my whole life. I paid my dues. I loved my husband and tried to save him. And now I'm being punished for having loved someone too much. That's what it feels like, punishment for caring." The interviewer, a sympathetic woman named Andrea Walsh, asked, "What do you want to happen now?" Dorothy looked at Travis, then back at the camera. "I want Judge Blackwell to understand that the people who come before him are real. We have stories, families, pain. We're not statistics or problems to be disposed of. We're human beings who deserve basic respect." The interview aired on the evening news and went viral online. By the next morning, it had been viewed over 100,000 times. The comment section was overwhelmingly supportive of Dorothy, with only a few trolls suggesting she should have worked harder or shouldn't have gotten into debt. But support wasn't universal. Judge Blackwell's defenders emerged, primarily conservative pundits and law and order advocates who argued that judges needed to be tough, that coddling criminals and vagrants only encouraged bad behavior, and that Blackwell was simply enforcing the law. One particularly inflammatory op-ed in a right-wing blog accused Dorothy of weaponizing her victimhood and Travis's club of intimidating the judiciary. The author, a retired prosecutor named Gerald Hutchins, wrote, "We cannot allow mob rule to dictate how our courts operate." Judge Blackwell was doing his job, and now he's being persecuted by a motorcycle gang and their mascot. The article only fanned the flames. Steel Brotherhood members responded with calm, factual rebuttals, pointing out that they had every right to attend public court proceedings and that their presence was peaceful. They emphasized their military service, their community charity work, and their commitment to lawful protest. 1 week after the courthouse incident, Travis organized the demonstration he'd promised. Over 200 people gathered outside the Multnomah County Courthouse on a cold Saturday morning. The crowd included Steel Brotherhood members, other veteran organizations, homeless advocacy groups, AARP members, clergy from various churches, and ordinary Portland citizens who'd been moved by Dorothy's story. They carried signs with messages like, "Justice should have mercy," "Dignity for all," and "Blackwell resign." Dorothy herself attended, despite her exhaustion, standing at the front of the crowd with Travis on one side and Angela on the other. The demonstration was peaceful and orderly. Veterans in their club leathers stood alongside elderly activists, social workers, and concerned parents. Several speakers addressed the crowd, sharing their own experiences with judicial cruelty and systemic indifference to the poor and vulnerable. Reverend Thomas Crawford from the First African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church spoke passionately. The measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. When our courts become places of humiliation rather than justice, when judges forget that mercy is as important as law, we all suffer. Dorothy Harrison's story is a reminder that any of us could be one tragedy away from where she is now. The local media covered the demonstration extensively. News helicopters circled overhead. Reporters interviewed participants. By Sunday morning, the story had been picked up by national outlets. CNN ran a segment titled, "When Justice Lacks Compassion, the Dorothy Harrison Case." MSNBC's morning show interviewed a legal ethics professor from Lewis and Clark Law School who called Blackwell's conduct highly inappropriate and potentially sanctionable. Judge Richard Blackwell, for his part, remained silent. He issued no public statement, no apology, no acknowledgement of the controversy. His office released a terse comment through the court's public affairs officer. Judge Blackwell stands by his courtroom conduct and decisions. He will not be intimidated by media pressure or special interest groups. But behind the scenes, pressure was mounting. The Oregon State Bar Association launched a formal investigation into Blackwell's conduct based on complaints filed by multiple attorneys and advocacy groups. The Commission on Judicial Fitness and Disability, a state body responsible for investigating judicial misconduct, also opened an inquiry. Multnomah County's Chief Judge, Andrea Liu, a respected jurist known for her fairness and compassion, requested a private meeting with Blackwell. According to sources who spoke to Jessica Winters on condition of anonymity, the meeting did not go well. Blackwell reportedly dismissed the complaints as political correctness run amok and refused to consider that his conduct might have been inappropriate. Judge Liu then did something unusual. She issued a public statement, carefully worded, but clearly distancing the court from Blackwell's behavior. The Multnomah County Circuit Court is committed to treating all individuals who come before us with dignity and respect. We are reviewing recent concerns raised about courtroom conduct and take these matters seriously. Every person, regardless of their circumstances, deserves fair and compassionate treatment in our justice system. The statement was a clear rebuke, even if it didn't mention Blackwell by name. Back at the Riverside Diner, Dorothy watched the unfolding events with a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and guilt. "I never wanted all this attention," she told Travis over breakfast one morning. "I feel like I've caused so much trouble." "You haven't caused anything," Travis replied firmly. "Blackwell caused this. You're just the one who finally exposed it. How many other people do you think he's treated the same way? How many who didn't have anyone standing up for them?" Dorothy nodded slowly, understanding the truth of his words. "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Travis said. "The investigation takes time, but in the meantime, we're going to make sure you're taken care of." True to his word, the Steel Brotherhood had rallied around Dorothy in practical ways. They'd started a GoFundMe campaign that raised over $30,000 in the first week, enough to pay off her court fine with plenty left over. Helen Hawk Morrison used her connections to find Dorothy a spot in a transitional housing program that provided small apartments for homeless individuals working toward stability. Calvin Hammer Rodriguez connected her with a pro bono attorney to help navigate her debt situation and explore bankruptcy options. For the first time in 2 years, Dorothy had hope, real, tangible hope for a future beyond mere survival. But the story wasn't over. Judge Richard Blackwell still sat on the bench, still heard cases, still wielded power over vulnerable lives. And Travis knew that until that changed, justice hadn't truly been served. The Commission on Judicial Fitness and Disability worked slowly but thoroughly. For 6 weeks, they interviewed witnesses, reviewed court transcripts, and examined complaints filed against Judge Richard Blackwell over his 12-year tenure. What they discovered was a pattern of misconduct that went far beyond a single incident with Dorothy Harrison. Attorney Rachel Kim, a public defender who'd appeared before Blackwell dozens of times, provided testimony about his consistent hostility toward indigent defendants. He makes comments about their clothing, their hygiene, their life choices, she told the investigators. He interrupts them mid-sentence, dismisses their explanations, and imposes maximum sentences for minor infractions. I've had clients leave his courtroom in tears, feeling dehumanized. Dr. Philip Anderson, a court-appointed psychologist, described how Blackwell regularly ignored mental health evaluations and treatment recommendations. I've submitted comprehensive assessments explaining that defendants suffer from severe PTSD, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia, with recommendations for treatment-based sentencing. Judge Blackwell tosses them aside and sentences these individuals to jail, where they receive minimal mental health care. It's cruel and counterproductive. Former defendants came forward with their own stories. Christina Valdez, a 42-year-old woman who'd struggled with addiction, described appearing before Blackwell for a drug possession charge. He called me a waste of space and asked why taxpayers should have to pay for junkie trash like me. I was trying to get into rehab, but he sent me to jail instead. I relapsed within a week of getting out. Jerome Mitchell, a homeless veteran with PTSD, recounted his experience. I was cited for sleeping in my car. Judge Blackwell asked if I'd ever considered being useful instead of being a burden on society. He said maybe I wasn't cut out for civilian life. I served 2 tours in Iraq. I have a Purple Heart, and he treated me like I was garbage. The stories accumulated, painting a portrait of a judge who'd lost sight of his fundamental duty to dispense justice with fairness and humanity. Meanwhile, Jessica Winters continued her investigative reporting. She obtained data showing that Blackwell imposed harsher sentences than any other judge in Multnomah County for comparable offenses. For misdemeanor drug possession, the average sentence from other judges was probation with mandatory treatment. Blackwell's average was 90 days in jail. For public camping violations, other judges typically dismissed charges with a warning. Blackwell imposed fines averaging $400 and jail time for repeat offenders. He's not just strict, Jessica wrote in a follow-up article. He's an outlier whose sentencing patterns suggest personal animus rather than judicial discretion. The pressure on Blackwell intensified. The Oregon State Bar Association, having completed its investigation, issued a public admonishment. A formal disciplinary action stating that Blackwell had violated the Code of Judicial Conduct, specifically the provisions requiring judges to treat all parties with patience, dignity, and courtesy. The admonishment stopped short of recommending removal, but it was a significant black mark on his record. Portland's mayor, Michelle Hayes, weighed in during a press conference about homelessness policy. When asked about the Dorothy Harrison case, she didn't mince words. What happened in that courtroom was unacceptable. Homelessness is a complex issue requiring compassion and comprehensive solutions, not judicial cruelty. I hope Judge Blackwell reflects on his conduct and considers whether he's serving the values of this community. Even some of Blackwell's former supporters began to distance themselves. The Multnomah County Republican Party, which had initially defended him as a law and order judge, issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that while we support strong judicial oversight, we also expect our judges to treat all individuals with basic human respect. Through it all, Dorothy tried to rebuild her life. She moved into the transitional housing apartment, a small studio in southeast Portland with a kitchenette, a real bed, and a door that locked. The first night alone there, she sat on the floor and cried with relief. Travis and the Steele Brotherhood remained constant presences. They helped her furnish the apartment with donated items, a couch, a table, dishes, linens. Helen Hawk Morrison took her shopping at Goodwill for clothing. Calvin Hammer Rodriguez accompanied her to appointments with her bankruptcy attorney. Slowly, Dorothy began to feel like a person again, rather than a problem. She started volunteering at the Veterans Resource Center again, serving meals on Thursday evenings. The men and women who came through recognized her from the news coverage. Some thanked her for speaking out. Others shared their own stories of hardship and humiliation. Dorothy listened to them all, offering the same compassion and dignity she wished had been extended to her. One evening, a young veteran named Christina Wallace approached Dorothy after dinner. Christina was 26, recently discharged from the Marines after serving in Afghanistan. She'd been struggling with PTSD and homelessness since returning to Portland. "I saw your interview on TV," Christina said shyly. "It made me feel less alone, like maybe I'm not broken, just dealt a bad hand, you know?" Dorothy hugged her. "You're not broken, sweetheart. You're a warrior who needs support, not judgment. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than you are." Christina started crying. "I have a court date next week, public intoxication. I'm terrified it'll be Judge Blackwell." Dorothy's expression hardened. "If it is, you call Travis immediately. You won't face him alone, I promise." The bond between Dorothy and the Steele Brotherhood deepened into something profound. They weren't just supporting her financially or logistically. They were restoring her sense of worth and belonging. And she, in turn, reminded them why they rode together: to protect and honor those who couldn't protect themselves. In mid-January, the Commission on Judicial Fitness and Disability released its findings. The report was scathing. It detailed a pattern of conduct unbecoming a judicial officer, including demeaning language toward defendants, apparent bias against homeless and indigent individuals, and a failure to maintain composure and impartiality. The Commission issued several recommendations. First, Judge Blackwell should be suspended without pay for 6 months. Second, he should complete mandatory training on judicial ethics, implicit bias, and trauma-informed justice. Third, he should issue a public apology to Dorothy Harrison and other defendants he'd mistreated. Finally, if further complaints arose during a 2-year probationary period, he should be removed from the bench permanently. The recommendations required approval from the Oregon Supreme Court, but legal experts considered that a formality given the Commission's thorough investigation. When Travis called to tell Dorothy the news, she was speechless. "They're suspending him," she finally asked. "For 6 months without pay," Travis confirmed. "And if he screws up again, he's done. It's not everything, but it's something." "It's more than something," Dorothy said, her voice breaking. "It's acknowledgement. It's saying what he did was wrong, that I matter." That evening, the Steele Brotherhood gathered at the Riverside Diner to celebrate. Frank broke out champagne, cheap stuff, but nobody cared. They toasted Dorothy, justice, and the power of ordinary people refusing to accept cruelty as normal. But Judge Blackwell himself had not been heard from. He'd refused all interview requests, made no public statements, and remained in seclusion at his home in the affluent West Hills neighborhood. Rumor had it that his wife, Patricia, was furious about the scandal and the damage to their social standing. Their adult children had reportedly stopped speaking to him, embarrassed by the national attention. Then, on a rainy February afternoon, something unexpected happened. Travis received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. When he answered, a man's voice spoke stiffly. "Mr. McAllister, this is Richard Blackwell. I'd like to speak with you and Ms. Harrison. Would that be possible?" Travis was stunned. "Why?" "Because..." Blackwell paused, seeming to struggle. Because I owe you both an explanation, if not an apology, and I'd prefer to do it in person rather than through the media circus. Travis wanted to tell him where to shove his apology, but something in Blackwell's voice, a weariness, a defeat, made him hesitate. I'll ask Dorothy. It's her choice. When Travis relayed the request, Dorothy was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, I'll meet with him, but only if you're with me, and only in a public place. They agreed to meet at the Courier Coffee Shop on Southwest Washington Street, neutral territory where they'd be visible, but could speak privately. Travis arrived early with Dorothy, securing a corner table. 10 minutes later, Richard Blackwell entered, and Dorothy barely recognized him. The arrogant, contemptuous judge had been replaced by a haggard man who looked like he'd aged a decade in 2 months. His hair seemed grayer, his face drawn. He wore casual clothes, slacks and a sweater, instead of his judicial robes, and he moved with none of his former authority. He approached their table hesitantly. Ms. Harrison, Mr. McAllister, thank you for agreeing to this. Dorothy nodded but said nothing. Travis gestured to the empty chair. Blackwell sat, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and stared at his hands for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and hoarse. I've spent 2 months thinking about what I did. About what I said to you, Miss Harrison, and to so many others. My attorneys advised me not to apologize, said it could be used against me in further proceedings. But I don't care anymore. You deserve an apology, and so do all the people I've mistreated from that bench. Dorothy listened, her expression unreadable. I don't have an excuse, Blackwell continued. I could tell you about the pressures of the job, the overwhelming caseload, the frustration of seeing the same people cycle through the system again and again. But that's not a justification. The truth is, somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people who appeared before me as human beings. They became problems to solve, cases to process. I lost sight of why I became a judge in the first place. And why was that? Dorothy asked quietly. Blackwell looked up, meeting her eyes. Because I believed in justice, real justice, not just punishment. My father was a public defender. He taught me that everyone deserves dignity, especially in a courtroom where they're at their most vulnerable. I forgot that lesson. I became what I despised, a bully with power. Travis spoke up, his tone hard. You humiliated Dorothy in front of a room full of people. You accused her of being a drug addict. You mocked her appearance, her situation, her life. And you've done the same to countless others. Why should we believe you're sincere now? You shouldn't, Blackwell said bluntly. I wouldn't believe me either. But I want you to know that I'm stepping down from the bench. Not because the Supreme Court orders it, but because I've realized I have no business being a judge anymore. I've lost the moral authority the position requires. Dorothy studied him carefully. Are you doing this because you genuinely regret your actions, or because you got caught? I'm doing it because, Blackwell paused, his voice catching, because 3 weeks ago, my daughter showed me a video. Her 9-year-old daughter, my granddaughter Emma, had come home from school crying. The other kids were teasing her, saying her grandfather was a monster who made grandmas cry. Emma asked her mother, "Why does Grandpa hate old people?" And my daughter showed me the video of Emma crying and asked me the same question. His eyes filled with tears. I couldn't answer her. I realized that my granddaughter was ashamed of me, and she should be, you should be, everyone should be. The three sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Dorothy spoke. Judge Blackwell, I spent 2 years believing I was worthless, that I deserved what happened to me, that I was a burden and a failure. You confirmed every terrible thing I thought about myself. You made me want to die. Blackwell flinched as if struck. But then these people, Dorothy gestured to Travis, reminded me that I matter, that my life has value, that kindness still exists. They saved me, not you. So if you want absolution, I can't give it. I don't have that in me right now." "I understand," Blackwell said quietly. "But," Dorothy continued, "I hope you do step down. And I hope you spend the rest of your life trying to be the man your granddaughter can be proud of. That's the only apology that matters. Becoming better." Blackwell nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you for meeting with me. I don't deserve your time or your words, but I'm grateful for both." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Ms. Harrison, for what little it's worth, I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Dorothy didn't respond. She simply watched as the broken judge walked out of the coffee shop and into the rain. After he left, Travis turned to Dorothy. "How do you feel?" "Empty," she admitted. "But also lighter, maybe. Like I can finally close this chapter." "So, what's next?" Travis asked. Dorothy smiled for the first time in weeks. "I keep living. I keep helping people at the center. I keep building a life worth having. That's the best revenge, isn't it? Living well despite everything." Travis raised his coffee cup. "To living well." Dorothy clinked her cup against his. "To living well." Spring arrived in Portland with an explosion of cherry blossoms along the waterfront and the return of mild, rain-free days. Dorothy Harrison stood at the window of her small apartment, watching the morning sunlight paint gold across the buildings of southeast Portland, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: contentment. 6 months had passed since that February meeting with Judge Blackwell. True to his word, he'd submitted his resignation to the Oregon Supreme Court in March, effective immediately. In his resignation letter, made public at his own insistence, he wrote candidly about his failures as a judge and a human being. He acknowledged the harm he'd caused and expressed hope that his departure would allow the court to restore public trust. The letter generated mixed reactions. Some praised his honesty and willingness to accept responsibility. Others dismissed it as self-serving damage control. Dorothy didn't follow the commentary closely. As she'd told Travis, she'd closed that chapter and was focused on moving forward. Her life had stabilized in ways she'd barely dared to imagine. The GoFundMe campaign ultimately raised $47,000, far exceeding expectations. With the help of Calvin Hammer Rodriguez and a financial advisor recommended by the Steele Brotherhood, Dorothy used the money wisely. She paid off the $500 fine, established an emergency fund, paid down some of her medical debt through a settlement negotiation, and even set aside funds for eventual rent when she transitioned out of the subsidized housing program. More importantly, Dorothy had found purpose again. At the Veterans Resource Center, she'd become much more than a volunteer serving meals. With Helen Hawk Morrison's mentorship, she developed a peer support program called Dorothy's Circle, where homeless and formerly homeless individuals met weekly to share experiences, resources, and encouragement. The program grew rapidly. Within 3 months, 30 people were attending regularly. Dorothy facilitated the meetings with warmth and wisdom earned through her own suffering. She didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. She offered presence, understanding, and practical help. One Thursday evening in April, Dorothy stood before her circle in the center's community room. Around her sat men and women of all ages, veterans and civilians, long-time homeless and newly displaced, those struggling with addiction and those fighting mental illness. They were each other's lifeline. "Tonight, I want to talk about dignity," Dorothy began. "For a long time, I thought dignity was something external, how others saw me, how I presented myself. When I lost my home, my savings, my stability, I felt like I'd lost my dignity too. But I've learned something these past months. Dignity isn't about where you live or how much money you have. It's about remembering your inherent worth, even when the world tries to convince you you're worthless." A young woman named Lisa Wright, who'd been living in her car with her 2 children, raised her hand. "But how do you hold on to that when everyone treats you like you're invisible? When you go to social services and they make you feel like a criminal for asking for help? By finding your people, Dorothy replied, the ones who see you. For me, that was Travis and the Steel Brotherhood. They didn't save me because I deserved it or earned it. They saved me because they believe every person deserves to be saved. You all are my people now, and we save each other every day just by showing up and saying, I see you. You matter. The group nodded, several people wiping away tears. After the meeting, Travis approached Dorothy with news. I got a call from Jessica Winters today. She's writing a follow-up article about where you are now 6 months later. She wants to interview you. Dorothy hesitated. I don't know if I want more attention. She also said someone from the Oregon Department of Human Services reached out to her. They're interested in your peer support program. They want to discuss funding it and expanding it to other centers across the state. Dorothy's eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously, your story didn't just take down a corrupt judge, Dot. It's changing how people think about homelessness and how we treat our most vulnerable. That's a legacy. The interview with Jessica took place the following week at the Riverside Diner, where Frank had set aside their usual corner booth. Dorothy arrived early, feeling nervous despite having done several interviews before. This one felt different. It wasn't about the trauma anymore, but about healing and hope. Jessica arrived with her recording equipment and a warm smile. Dorothy, thank you for doing this. I know you've had enough media attention to last a lifetime. It's okay, Dorothy said, settling into the booth. If my story can help others, then maybe all of it meant something. Jessica set up her recorder and pulled out her notes. So 6 months after the courthouse incident, where are you now? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Dorothy considered the question carefully. I'm living in transitional housing on Southeast 76th Avenue. It's a small studio, but it's mine. I have a bed, a kitchen, a door that locks. Things I took for granted my entire life until I didn't have them. Physically, I'm doing better. Regular meals, shelter from the weather, access to health care through the Oregon Health Plan. And emotionally, Jessica prompted. That's harder to quantify, Dorothy admitted. I still have nightmares about being on the streets. I panic sometimes when I see my bank balance getting low. I cry when I think about Kenneth and how much he'd hate what I went through. But I also laugh now. I have purpose. I'm helping people through Dorothy's Circle. I'm rebuilding relationships. My son Jacob flew out from Boston last month to visit, and we're talking regularly now. I'm not the woman I was before I lost everything, but I'm not sure I'd want to be her again. What do you mean? Dorothy smiled softly. The woman I was before was comfortable, privileged in ways she didn't recognize. She passed homeless people on the street and felt sympathy, but it was abstract. She donated to charities but didn't really understand. Now I understand. I've been there. I've felt that desperation, that invisibility, and that's made me more human, I think, more compassionate, more aware of how fragile our security really is. Jessica nodded, making notes. Tell me about Dorothy's Circle. How did that start? Helen Morrison, one of the Steel Brotherhood members, suggested I might have something valuable to offer other people who'd experienced homelessness. At first I didn't see it. What did I have to offer? But Helen pointed out that I'd survived something traumatic and was coming out the other side. That journey could help others. Dorothy's voice grew more animated as she spoke about the program. We meet every Thursday evening at the Veterans Resource Center. Anyone who's experiencing or has experienced homelessness is welcome. We share meals, resources, job leads, housing information. But mostly, we share our stories and remind each other that we're not alone, that we're not failures, that we deserve dignity and respect. How many people are participating now? About 40 regular attendees, with new people joining each week. Some are veterans, some aren't. Some are dealing with addiction or mental illness. Others just got hit by life circumstances like I did. We don't judge. We just support. Jessica leaned forward. I heard the Oregon Department of Human Services is interested in your program. Dorothy's face lit up. Yes, they reached out through Travis. They want to fund an expansion, training facilitators, creating similar programs at resource centers in Eugene, Salem, Bend, and Medford. They're calling it the Peer Dignity Project, and they want me to help develop the training curriculum. That's incredible, Dorothy. Your experience in Judge Blackwell's courtroom has literally changed state policy. Dorothy's expression sobered. I wish it hadn't taken public humiliation to create change. How many people suffered before me? How many will suffer in other courtrooms with other judges who've forgotten their humanity? But yes, if some good comes from my pain, then I'm grateful for that. Speaking of Judge Blackwell, he resigned and issued a public apology. How did that make you feel? Dorothy paused, choosing her words carefully. Complicated. Part of me wanted him to suffer like I suffered, wanted him punished and destroyed. But that's not who I want to be. His apology felt genuine, though I can't forgive him. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I can release the anger I carried toward him. That anger was poisoning me, and I needed to let it go for my own healing. Have you had any contact with him since your meeting at the coffee shop? No, and I don't expect to. I heard he's doing volunteer work at a legal aid clinic, helping people navigate the system he once wielded against them. If that's true, it's a start. Redemption is possible for anyone, I suppose, even judges who forget their duty. Jessica shifted topics. Let's talk about the Steel Brotherhood. They've been central to your recovery. What does that relationship mean to you? Dorothy's eyes filled with tears, though she smiled. They saved my life. Not metaphorically, literally. I was at the point of giving up when they stood beside me in that courtroom. Travis, Calvin, Helen, all of them. They reminded me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when you have nothing to offer them in return. You've become known as Vovô Dot in the veteran community. Tell me about that. Vovô is Portuguese for grandmother, Dorothy explained. Travis started calling me that years ago when I volunteered at the Veterans Resource Center. It stuck. Now I've got 43 bikers who call me their grandmother, which is both hilarious and deeply touching. They invite me to their events, include me in their club decisions, not as a mascot, but as genuine family. Last month, they threw me a birthday party at the Riverside Diner. 70 people showed up. I cried for an hour. Jessica smiled. What would you say to other people who are experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity right now? Dorothy looked directly at the recorder, knowing her words would reach people in desperate situations. I would say, you are not invisible. You are not worthless. You did not necessarily do anything wrong to end up where you are. Sometimes life is just cruel and random, but you are still human, still deserving of dignity, still capable of rebuilding. She continued, her voice strengthening. Find your people. Whether it's a shelter, a support group, a church, a community center, find the people who see you as human. Ask for help, even when pride tells you not to. Use the resources available, whether it's food banks, housing assistance, or healthcare programs. Most importantly, don't give up. I know it's hard. God knows I wanted to give up. But you have value, and the world needs you in it. And what would you say to people who've never experienced homelessness? Those who pass by people on the street or see homeless encampments and don't understand? I would say, please remember that every person you see on the street has a story. They had childhoods, families, dreams. Something happened. Illness, job loss, abuse, addiction, mental health crisis, medical debt. It could happen to anyone. It happened to me, and I did everything right. So when you see someone panhandling or sleeping rough, don't assume they're lazy or made bad choices. Assume they're human beings in crisis who need compassion, not judgment. Jessica asked a few more questions about practical resources and Dorothy's future plans, then wrapped up the interview. After turning off the recorder, she said, "Dorothy, I've been covering courts and homelessness for 5 years. Your story is the first one that's actually led to meaningful change. Thank you for being brave enough to speak out." "Thank you for listening," Dorothy replied, "and for telling the truth about what happened." The article ran the following Sunday in the Oregonian's feature section under the headline, "From Humiliation to Hope: Dorothy Harrison's Journey and the Movement She Inspired." It included updates on Judge Blackwell's resignation, the expansion of Dorothy's Circle, and statistics showing how Multnomah County was reforming its approach to homeless citations. The article noted that in the 6 months since Dorothy's case gained attention, citations for public camping had dropped by 60% as the city implemented new protocols emphasizing service referrals over punishment. Judges were required to complete trauma-informed justice training, and a new diversion program allowed people cited for survival crimes to have charges dismissed if they engaged with social services. Small changes, perhaps, but changes nonetheless. Dorothy's suffering had created ripples that extended far beyond her individual case. In May, Dorothy received an unexpected letter from Emma Blackwell, Judge Blackwell's 9-year-old granddaughter. The letter, written in careful cursive on pink stationery, read, "Dear Mrs. Harrison, my name is Emma. My grandpa is Judge Blackwell. I wanted to say I'm sorry for what he did to you. It made me really sad when I saw you crying on TV. My grandpa is trying to be better now. He volunteers to help people, and he talks to me about being kind to everyone. He says you taught him an important lesson about treating people with respect. I hope you are doing better and have a nice place to live. My mom says you help other people now, and that's really cool. When I grow up, I want to help people too. I'm sorry again for what happened. Love." Emma Dorothy read the letter 3 times, crying each time. That evening, she showed it to Travis at the diner. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to write back," Dorothy said. "This little girl doesn't carry her grandfather's sins, and maybe she'll grow up to be the kind of person who makes the world better." Dorothy wrote a gentle letter to Emma, thanking her for her kindness and encouraging her dreams of helping others. She included a small pin in the shape of a butterfly with a note. "This butterfly reminds me that people can transform and change. Keep being kind, Emma. The world needs more people like you." 2 weeks later, Dorothy received a thank you drawing from Emma, a picture of a butterfly with the words "Be kind" written in rainbow colors. Dorothy hung it on her refrigerator, where it remained. June brought Portland's famous Rose Festival, and the Steel Brotherhood participated in the Grand Floral Parade, as they did every year. This time, however, they had a special passenger. Dorothy rode in a sidecar attached to Travis's motorcycle, waving to the crowds that lined the parade route. When they passed the reviewing stand, the announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. "Here comes the Steel Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, accompanied by Dorothy Harrison, the grandmother whose courage inspired our city to examine how we treat our most vulnerable citizens." The crowd erupted in applause. People held signs reading, "We love you, Dorothy," and "Thank you, Vovo Dot." Children waved. Strangers shouted encouragement. Dorothy, overwhelmed with emotion, covered her face and cried happy tears while waving with her other hand. "You're famous, Vovo," Travis said with a laugh, glancing back at her. "I'm grateful," Dorothy corrected. "There's a difference." After the parade, the Steel Brotherhood hosted a community barbecue at Laurelhurst Park, the same park where Dorothy had once slept on benches. They invited everyone, housed and unhoused, rich and poor, anyone who wanted to come. Over 300 people attended, sharing food, stories, and community. Dorothy stood at the center of it all, serving hot dogs and hamburgers alongside Helen, Calvin, and the others. She watched as homeless veterans received respect and welcome, as families laughed together, as former strangers became friends. Vernon Maxwell, the elderly veteran she'd met at the shelter, approached with tears in his eyes. He'd recently secured housing through a veterans program. "I never thought I'd see the day when people like us got treated like human beings," he said. "You did this, Dorothy. You changed things." "We did this," Dorothy corrected gently. "All of us. By refusing to accept cruelty as normal." As the sun set over Portland, casting orange and pink across the sky, Dorothy sat on a picnic blanket surrounded by her chosen family. Travis, Helen, Calvin, Angela, and dozens of others whose lives had intersected with hers through shared struggle and survival. Travis raised a bottle of root beer in a toast to Vovo Dot, who taught us that dignity can't be taken away, only forgotten, and that the right people will always remind you who you are. "To dignity," the group echoed, raising their own drinks. Dorothy looked around at the faces illuminated by the fading light, scarred faces, weathered faces, beautiful faces, and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd lost so much: her husband, her home, her savings, her sense of security. But she'd gained something too. A deeper understanding of human resilience, a broader definition of family, and a purpose that transcended personal comfort. 2 second chances, Dorothy added softly, and to the people who make them possible. The group drank, talked, and laughed as darkness fell and stars appeared. Somewhere across the city, other people struggled in shelters, in cars, on streets, fighting their own battles with homelessness and despair. Dorothy's story wouldn't solve all their problems. One person's courage couldn't dismantle systemic failures or eliminate poverty, but it could inspire. It could awaken compassion. It could remind people that change was possible when ordinary citizens refused to look away from suffering. As the barbecue wound down and people began to leave, Travis walked Dorothy to his motorcycle. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Home. Such a simple word, yet it contained entire universes of meaning. Safety, belonging, rest, dignity. Dorothy had a home now, modest but real. And more than that, she'd found home in this community of broken, beautiful people who'd chosen to care for each other. "Yes," Dorothy said, smiling, "I'm ready to go home." Travis started the engine, and they rode through the Portland night, past the city lights and the river, past the courthouse where Dorothy had once been humiliated, past the shelter where she'd once slept, toward the small apartment where she could rest without fear. The wind carried away the last remnants of shame and replaced them with something fierce and bright. Hope. Not the naive hope of someone who'd never suffered, but the hard-won hope of someone who'd survived and chosen, despite everything, to keep living, keep helping, keep believing in human goodness. Behind them, the Steel Brotherhood followed in formation, their motorcycle headlights cutting through the darkness like beacons. They weren't just escorting an elderly woman home. They were honoring a warrior who'd fought the hardest battle, the battle to maintain dignity and humanity in a world that tried to strip both away. And in apartments, shelters, and cars across Portland, people who'd heard Dorothy's story closed their eyes and dreamed of their own second chances, their own transformations, their own journeys from shame to strength. Dorothy Harrison had been ridiculed by a judge who thought her powerless. But she'd discovered a truth that no courtroom could diminish. Real power wasn't found in gavels and robes. It was found in community, compassion, and the courage to stand up and say, "I matter, we all matter, and we deserve better." That truth echoed through Portland streets, carried on the rumble of motorcycle engines and the voices of people who refused to be invisible anymore. And Dorothy, Vovo Dot, rode into the night with her family beside her, finally at peace.